On this episode, I talk with an amazing agency that sees all the numbers of all the agencies out there. And we talk about the benchmarks that agencies need to go after, what is the right forecasting method. And it really starts with, the data entry being the right way. But it's a really fun conversation. And we actually, it's a three-way conversation. So it's a little different than a normal, but still the same. But you'll really enjoy this episode. Let's jump into it. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Jason. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so if you guys are listening, we have multiple guests on. We have Nate. So Nate, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then we'll go to you, Adam.
Okay, I'm Nate Jenson. I am a certified management accountant, along with a few other credentials that don't really matter, but I do accounting, and I specifically focus on accounting, bookkeeping, reporting for marketing agencies and ad agencies.
Awesome. And Adam, who are you?
So I am president and CEO of two agencies. One's called Relic. The other is called EKR. I've been doing it for several years and work very closely with Nate on our accounting.
Awesome. Well, it's good timing when we're actually all chatting, right? Because, we're coming up, we're in 21, a new year. Thank God we're past 2020. And I always tell everybody, it's really important to really do a forecasting to see where you're at and also kind of benchmarking. So Nate, tell us a little bit about, like, since you've been working with agencies on, knowing the numbers, like what are you seeing with agencies?
It's been really great for me to be able to observe a lot of different business owners and agency owners in how they run their businesses. There are a lot of really smart people who simply just don't implement the tools that they should. Someone can run an agency for years, for decades even, and do okay because they're a smart guy and they know their business, but they lack some of the tools that you just mentioned. When Adam and I met a little over 3 years ago, he was just looking for a bookkeeper. He just needed some help getting his bills paid and running his payroll. And I had some extra time, so I came in and started doing that for him. And he started realizing that I had some other skills that maybe he could benefit from. And so he asked, hey, can you do forecasting? I'm like, yeah, I can do forecasting. Hey, here's some industry metrics we want to hit. Can you somehow see where we stand compared to these? And over time, we've implemented tool after tool after tool. And we've gotten to the point where we know 6 months, sometimes 12 months in advance, what our metrics are going to be. So we can change now, change those behaviors or change staffing or change whatever now, so that 12 months from now or 6 months from now, we can hit the profit numbers that we need to hit. And like I said, there's a lot of smart people who run decent agencies, but you're never as good as you could be if you don't use those kinds of tools, if you don't look into the future.
Yeah, a lot of times I did my budgeting at the agency in the early days, or even and I'll admit it, toward the middle of the agency days, by looking at the bank account and be like, I got this much money, we're good. And it was kind of living month to month, it seemed like. So Adam, what were some of the numbers that you were looking for, to make, so you could make better decisions? Because I think a lot of people, we don't know, like we're just being reactive, right? We're reactive in our agency, and we may not know the numbers that we should be actually going after.
Well, this is where I was really fortunate, Jason, because so in 2016, I purchased Relic from the previous owner. It was called Sorensen Advertising back then. And I mean, I just needed somebody to help me understand accounting, because I went from director of client services to agency owner and had no idea how to read a P&L, a balance sheet, and much less look into the future. I couldn't even close a month, 6 months after the month, much less look into the future, right? I think a lot of agency owners are in that same boat. And so I looked for bookkeepers and I said, hey, this is what I need done. And they all said, I can do it. And of course they'd get in and we're a full service agency. And so there's traditional media invoices, there's printing invoices, there's so many different transactions that it would overwhelm the different bookkeepers that we brought in. And Nate actually responded to an ad that I had for a full-time bookkeeper. And he said, hey, look, uh, I promise I'll be the last bookkeeper you ever need. I remember he said that in the interview. He's like, but I still have my own company, and I'm not going to work for you full time. But he had such confidence that I said, you know what, let's give him a shot. And 6 months later, not only was I closing months within 60 days of the start of the month, which was a huge change for us, but we also were beginning to look into the future. And over the last 3.5 years, Nate and I have been working together now to, every month we add something new and we add something new. And I've also made Nate my CFO in part of this process because he's so critical to the success of our business.
Very cool. And Nate, what are some of the key numbers that the listeners should be really having an eye on, and what are some of the benchmarks, since you've been seeing a lot of the behind the scenes of agency work, where they can be like, give themselves their own grade.
Okay, let me give you an example. You mentioned you would manage your business by looking at your bank account. Certainly, how much cash you have on hand is an important metric, but it only tells you exactly where you are in this moment, and it's going to change. One thing you want to look at is your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. To a point, you can kind of think of it as your profit or your bottom line. It's not quite correct, but it's close enough. We look at that and we say, hey, that should be 25% of your gross income. So you take your top line revenue, subtract any media costs, your media spend. Your earnings essentially should be 25% of that number. And if you start with that, saying that's one thing you can measure and say, are we at 25%? But if we're not, you've then got to look at why are you not? And then you have other metrics, such as what is our compensation? How much we're paying our people as a percentage of that number as well. And if that's at 55%, you're probably doing pretty good. If that's at 80%, you can immediately tell, hey, there's an area that we need to work on and fix and get our costs down. And so by looking at all these different areas, it's compensation, it's general administrative expenses, rent, and so forth. If you know each percentage, or each of these categories, what your percentage should be and what it is, you know where in your business you need to target to cut those costs.
Yeah, Nate, I'm going to jump in there if that's okay. I think most agency owners are like me. I ran it by my gut. I was like, oh man, this department's super busy. I need to hire in that department.
You're unique, Adam. That's why. I've never heard that.
I'm a dime a dozen, Jason.
That's right.
But we just run it with our gut. We're just like, hey, people are busy, let's hire. And now with these agency benchmark metrics that Nate has brought to us, we're now saying we're looking at. So, for example, in September of this year, we were looking at November, December, saying, what is our compensation going to be, and how far off of 55% are we going to be, and deciding, do we need to make this hire that a department is asking us for, or is this something we should hold off on until the beginning of the year when things pick back up? And that's a visibility into my agency that I've never had in the past.
And if I can build on that too, it's not just about hiring or not hiring, because if you get to that point and you decide, hey, our percentage is too high, we can't hire, you don't just say, well, I guess we just let the department be busy. You then have more information. You say, well, why are they so busy? You can go back and you check, are we not charging enough? That's a possibility. We're not charging the clients. Are people misusing time? Are they are they in the wrong place? Are we paying people to do a job maybe they're just not suited for? So there's all these questions and potential problems you can identify by looking at these numbers. It's not just, do we hire or not? It's a whole slew of things.
Yeah, I always tell everybody they're never charging enough. Honestly, I'm like, you can always charge more. And then if you charge more, you'll make more, then you can hire more, and then you have more time, and you just get more of everything. But let's talk more about some of the other benchmarks, right? So you mentioned 55% for, that was pretty interesting. So what are some of the other benchmarks that tell us that an agency is doing well? Like, or what should they actually be? What's their goal?
So
like for
the
marketing and all this other stuff,
right,
sales.
right. So you've got, think of it this way: you've got 100% to work with, right? So after your ad
That
spend,
101. I always
no,
told no.
so
Okay.
some
I
people run
keep
it that way.
asking him for that, but he won't give me that.
Yep, dad says no.
Damn accountants.
So so you have 100% to work with. 25% you want as your profit or your EBITDA. Okay, that's where you start. And if it's lower than that, then you got to say what are we missing? You want about 55% compensation, 5% in marketing, 5% rent, and 10% in other general administrative. And if I got all the numbers right, that'll get you to 100%.
You better have the numbers right. Me and Adam sure are not going to get the numbers right.
Right?
We're
I'm
creatives.
not the guy.
We're
Yeah.
putting pretty colors and come out with campaigns. Like we need numbers.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people will say, you're a numbers guy, right? You like math, or you should have this, like it's all in your head, right? I'm very much a spreadsheet guy or a QuickBooks guy. I love pushing the numbers around and finding the data. Adam's a great example of one of those smart guys who could run his agency kind of out of his head and do okay, because he'll say, hey, what was our spend on this last year? And he'll throw out a number, and he'll generally be pretty close. But I can prove to you exactly what the number is if I get a few minutes in my spreadsheet.
I'm usually off by a few pennies, Jason.
A few pennies, yeah, at least.
Pennies. I'm usually off by a couple decimals, couple commas.
Yeah.
But well, I mean, even years ago, I look back at, and a lot of times I see agencies, they think they're at a certain level, right? Like, and it kind of comes into kind of maybe three things, and I think three things that you guys do, really well probably is like, you have to like garbage in, garbage out, right? So you got to make sure that, I see so many people, they don't have the right bookkeeper. They don't have a strategy for where things actually go. Because then, if we don't have an accurate projection of where we're at, then how can we make decisions? Like from like bookkeeping to, a dashboard. Then I feel like for the dashboard, then we can make those decisions on, all right, we need to, like you were saying, native, like, oh, well, if we're at 80%, for this one, and we should be at 55, this is where we need to do. And then, I think also looking into the future and being able to, like, I remember like, we did everything by spreadsheet for our forecasting, right? We weren't able to find a company like yours, which, now thank God there's something, out there that does that. But we would do everything on a spreadsheet. We would basically put it together every month. And when we're able to see, and Adam, you can talk a little bit more about this too, is like when we could see, man, we're good for 6 months, but then we need to do something, or we could throw in, like we could do a little pro forma saying, if we invest in this, and we take some of this profit here and put it in here, what's the gain? And just like I guess it's kind of like running scenarios or modeling, right? Is it modeling? Like,
Yeah.
it's so freeing. And it makes me sleep better at night. Does that happen with you, Adam?
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example, Jason. So I remember on March 11th of 2020, when President Trump said, "Hey, we're cutting off travel from China," right? Well, my agency focuses on tourism, the Relic side, and so I tears in my eyes. Am I going to lose my business, right? And so Nate and I sat down the very next day and we started planning, and we were looking at what our current numbers said, and we had to identify how those numbers were probably going to change. We ran different scenarios, right? We identified all the expenses that we needed to cut, and we agreed that we would roll out a 10% pay cut, including the owners across the board, to all of our employees. And we implemented that pay cut for 60 days. And during that time, we were figuring out how revenue was going to change. There were clients that said, "Hey, let's pause everything for 60 days," and because of the vision that Nate was able to give me through our forecasting tools, we were able to make the decisions that are allowing me at Christmas time right now to take that 10% pay cut and give all that money that we held back to our employees, plus profit sharing for the year, because it turned out to be a much more profitable year than we thought it was going to be on March 11th. And that's all because of the decisions we were able to make because of the visibility Nate has given me into my business.
Bravo. Bravo.
Thank you. And if I can pat myself on the back a little bit.
That's what
Adam,
you're here for, Nate.
That's
you're
what
not,
I'm here
you're
for.
not allowed.
That's what I'm here for. Adam's story, it's not unique. Across all my clients, every single one of my clients through COVID this year, they're going to have a profitable year. Several of them are going to have, in terms of profit, one of their best years ever. Not in terms of sales, a lot of clients lost sales, but because, again, they had that understanding of exactly where they were financially, they could make those decisions and keep their profit, positive, and in some cases really positive, just because they knew where they were.
Yeah, I see so many agencies kind of like, if you've ever walked in the snow for a long period of time, you can kind of have snow blindness. And a lot of agencies kind of run into that, where we're kind of staring, into the sun, into the field, and we're trying to walk, and we start getting, this little blindness. But when you can kind of really start seeing the numbers and you put the right team in place in order to do it, then, now you can see a crystal clear path. And I can't tell you how many times when I chat with agency owners all day long and I start asking basic numbers and they have no idea. And I'm like, how could you possibly make a decision without just totally, flipping a coin, going heads, tails, or whatever it is. So it's a much needed service. So tell us a little bit more about Agency Dad and how people can, reach out to you, Nate, for the ones that are going through the snow blindness right now.
Well, the website is agencydad.money. In fact, something you mentioned a few minutes ago, garbage in, garbage out. There's even a quote I've put on my website that I've said to many, many people many times, and that is that 90% or 95% of your data analysis is in your data entry. People, in fact, what Adam mentioned earlier, right? When I came to him and I told him, hey, I'll be the last bookkeeper you'll ever need, it's because I understood that people like him have gone through bookkeeper after bookkeeper, in many cases, just trying to find somebody who can get the bills paid and run the payroll and produce a profit and loss statement at the end of the month. And it's amazing how many people in this industry can't even get that far. And so my main focus when I start with a new client is, let's make sure that your bookkeeping is done right. Because if your bookkeeping is done right, it's very easy to say, here's where you are, right? And if we know where you are, then we can create a forecast, a P&L forecast, a cash forecast, so we can kind of plan that path forward. But if you're not even sure that your data entry, and I've seen a lot of this, but if you're not even sure that your data entry is being done well and consistent, the numbers aren't going to mean anything. Adam's looked at several companies to acquire and had me kind of review their financials, and he wants me to compare them to his financials. And in a lot of cases, I'm like, look, their sales are all over the board, their expenses are all over the board. And if you've gone through 3 or 4 bookkeepers, each one's going to do it differently, and there's no consistency. And so it's so important to have that piece in place first. And then once your bookkeeping is good, and you can rely on your profit and loss and your balance sheet and your statement of cash flows, the one that Adam calls the "Where's my money" sheet, then you can.
We all like that sheet,
right?
It started out as the "Where the hell is my money" sheet, and then it migrated to the "Where's my money" sheet.
Yeah. Well, that was the interesting thing, because he would make a large profit and not see it in his bank account. And he's like, "Where's my money?" And then we had to go through the financial statements, and I'd explain, here's your profit, here's the cash flow, here's where it went. And then
isn't that so true though? Like, the agency keeps growing, right? And then we look at it at the end of the year, we're like, why didn't I make more money? Like,
right.
I feel like
am I personally ever going to benefit from this?
Yeah, I'm like I paid people more. I gave them raises because the company grew, but I'm personally getting less. And I guess it really does come down to, bad data entry, not knowing the numbers.
Well,
like
part of it does, Jason, but something we implemented, gosh, we put this in place 2.5 years ago. Adam was like, shouldn't I get a regular raise or distributions or something? And we actually put a process in place where every quarter we're able to say, here's what you as an owner can take out of your business. If you don't have that in a plan and in my case, in a spreadsheet, right? It's so easy to just spend it on more advertising or spend it on more employees. It's like, no, you've earned this. Let's have a plan for you to benefit from it as well, and not just in 20 years when you sell your agency.
Yeah, I think that's why so many agencies, implement the profit first mentality, right? Of being like, well, rather than us being paid last. That's why, I mean, it's such a simple concept. I've never read the book. I've had them on the show, but it's like, take a certain percentage of whatever you get from the first check, pay yourself first. Like, it's a brilliant one that I wish I came up with. I should come up with my book. Pay myself first, dummy.
Well, Jason, I get a kick out of it because it's my agency, right? But I have to go to Nate to make sure that I can take money out, or that I can, all the different decisions I have to make. And we partnered with Nate on the brand creation of this company, and we decided to call it Agency Dad, because that truly is what he is to agencies. It might be my agency, but if I want to make sure I'm being smart about taking money out of it, or buying another agency, or making a big decision, I got to go ask Dad if that's a good decision. And he really helps me with all that.
So Nate, I'm gonna, if you're ever looking for interns, my son, he's 14, he bosses me around. Anything I buy, he always tells me it's a bad decision. He's basically dad. He's grandpa to me. So
Okay.
I need to put him with you, so then he can really truly be, taking care of me.
Nice.
Because Adam, when you're telling that story, like whenever I buy something, like some toy, my son is just like Nate. They'll be like, that's a dumb decision, man. Like my wife's like, you'll never be able to buy anything if you put Chase or Luke involved. So
Well, and let me speak to that actually. So a couple of years ago, our CPAs, we have an outside CPA firm that does Adam's taxes, and they said, hey, you can buy a new vehicle, and here's going to be your tax benefit from that and doing it. And Adam called me and said, hey, just so you know, I'm buying a truck. And I said, well, have you considered the interest expense? Have you considered the additional cash flow that you're going to have to spend on it? In the end, I think it still was a good decision. He went ahead and went forward with the truck. But we went through the differentiation in buying it versus not buying it. How does it affect profit? How does that affect actual cash? And is it still a good decision? Now it's his agency. He gets to make the decision and disagree with my advice if he chooses to, but at least he has what he needs to make that decision.
he has that clarity, and I think
The
that's
clarity. Yeah.
we all need, in order to make better decisions. And if you know the numbers, or someone knows the numbers for you, I mean, that's one of the things I always tell everybody is one of the 5 roles of being the CEO of your agency is understanding the numbers. You don't have to run the numbers or do the numbers. You just have to understand it. And if you hire someone like Agency Dad, I think go check with Dad. I always wondered about that name. I was like, I really don't like that name. But now that you explained that, I was like, that's totally right. Like there's so many of us.
It
When
started
Adam
out as a
suggested
joke.
that, I hated it. I thought that's the stupidest thing. But when he explained it to me, how he sees
That's your
that
tagline.
kind of
Check with Dad.
advice, yeah. So anyway, it ended up being a good thing.
I love it. Well, do we have any special offers for the listeners, and where do they go?
We do. As we talked about the metrics a little bit, those agency metrics, the 25% EBITDA and so forth. For me, I think the first thing people ought to do is kind of, again, know where they are, know where they stand. And so what we're offering is for the first 5 people who want to get in touch with me, we'll do that audit for free. We'll let them know where they stand compared to those benchmarks. And they can do that at agencydad.money/free audit.
Awesome. Well, thanks guys so much coming on. And for everyone listening, you guys got to go to agencydad.money/free audit. Get your free audit. Even if they're fully booked on doing the free audits, you should definitely check them out, because if you want that more clarity to make better informed decisions and just have the sense of mind, right? I think like if I had, I'll chat with you after the interview. And be like, if I have a better way of be like, hey, should I go buy this? Like, is this a good investment into it? I think it just gives you that peace of mind rather than, I guess that self-doubt that holds us back from, doing some things that could grow the agency. So make sure you guys go to agencydad.money/free audit. And until next time, have a swank day.